This is future Cayleigh giving you a note. I apologize if you hear road noises. It's lunch hour, and I live right next to a busy street. That won't happen in the future because I'm moving back to your scheduled programming. Hello, internet friends, and welcome to Subscriber Storytime number 3. Today I have 6 stories waiting for your delightful, frightful enjoyment. Not to mention the insomnia you're gonna get. I think it's a good deal, but I also think sleep is a waste of time. If I look sick, it's because I'm running a fever. So let's get down with this sickness and read some creepy stories. Alright, let's do this. Let's do this thing, right? Our first one comes to us from Brent, who is from Canada. Canada, the land of the best pizza topping in the world. I'm just kidding. Awesome to hear from you guys in other lands. Here we go with Brent's story. My name is Brent, and I'm from Newfoundland, Canada, and I would like to share my creepy story with you. So, this story starts off with my older sister. When she was younger, she had a Ouija board. I remember seeing it around, but I never did bother with it. Eventually, it just seemed to not be around anymore. Years later, my sister being already moved out of the house and on her own, I found the board again and showed my mom. However, she swore to me that she had thrown it out years ago. I didn't think anything of it and thought she just made a mistake. I had no use for a Ouija board, so I decided to give it away to a friend who was into witchcraft at the time. And that was the end of the Ouija board for me for a while. A year or so after giving it away, I was in high school at the time and had the house parent-free. So my cousin, his girlfriend, a friend, and myself decided we wanted to have a bit of fun and decided to borrow the Ouija board. At our first attempt, nothing happened, so I called my witch friend and asked for some advice. She told us some things to do, none of which I remember now, and on our second attempt, still nothing happened. However, I began to feel a pain on the outer side of my left forearm. It was a pulsing pain. I looked down and realized that the skin was actually burned away. It was extremely tender, as most burns are, and the shape of the burn looked like someone had scratched me with a fingernail. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe it was a scratch. I can assure you it was not. Nothing scratched me. The burn just appeared, and I still have the scar to this day. I called my friend and told her what happened. She suggested that we stop and that I make a circle around myself with salt. After following her instructions, I decided that I no longer wanted the board in my house. However, I didn't have a car at the time, and my cousin's girlfriend refused to drive me, so I took the board, and mind you, it was nighttime, and I began to walk to my friend's house with it. As I got about 50 feet away from my house, I heard my friends running out and screaming. They jumped in the car and picked me up on the way. They told me that when I left, our friend underwent a strange feeling in her chest, and it was making it very hard for her to breathe. It was as if someone was pushing on her. They dropped me off to my friend's house so I could return the board, and then took me back home and left. As I mentioned earlier, I was home alone for that night, and I am not the type of person that scares easy, but that night I ended up leaving and staying at another friend's house. There was just too strange a feeling afterward in my own house. The next day, everything was normal again, and I never had an experience in my home since then. You see, I'm a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. I think a lot of things can have a logical explanation, but I also believe there are some legit paranormal demonic events that I can't explain. One thing even I don't fuck with, as someone who leans a little can't talk today. Something I don't fuck with, as someone who leans a little more skeptic than believer, I don't fuck with a Ouija board. I owned a Ouija board as sort of a I have one deal, but I don't mess around with that shit. Do I believe it's dangerous? I have no idea. I have no clue. What I do know is how many people, non-believers and believers alike, who warn me against messing around with it. So I don't. And that's enough to scare me off of using one. So. You're a brave soul, my friend. I hope all is well with you, and I'm glad things seem calm as of right now. Ouija, again, no. No thank you. On to the next one. This is from Aotora, parentheses, Aotora. Here we go. Aotora. My creepiest experience by far happened years ago when I was 14 or 15. I had to take the bus to high school since I lived in the middle of nowhere. It was a small town with a primary school, few shops, police station, and a church, and around 5,000 people. so we all had to go to another town for high school. My bus ride took about an hour and a half each way, and in the evening the buses weren't that frequent. During the morning and afternoon, you would get one each hour or even half hour if there were a lot of people going, but in the evening you had one every 2 hours. You could go hitchhiking because we actually had a place where people could go, and a lot of people would hitchhike at once, so people would take at least 2 or 3 people at once. Safety in numbers, basically, but the majority of us still didn't want to do that when it was dark. It was winter, so I decided to go to the bar at the bus stop to get a cocoa or something like that. And there was this old man there. He was a waiter. He stopped at my table after he gave me a drink and started talking, and this is normal over here. I'm used to it. If there's not much traffic in the bar, waiters will sit at the tables and chatter on and go wait on people when they come around. Now, this dude, he was around 60-ish. He starts asking me where I'm from. And I, like the dumb idiot I am, tell him my real-life hometown. And he was like, "Oh, I can drive you home if you want." I say, "No thank you, I'll wait for the bus." He then says, "I'm driving through there every day, and I can give you my phone number if you want, and you can give me yours. I'd really like to meet you again because you are really adorable." At this point, I am creeped out by this man. I want to pay him, but he won't leave the table. He kept annoying me, and I couldn't leave because he was sitting next to the door. Luckily, another man entered the bar and sat at another table, so he had to go wait on him. I just dropped the money without asking for the bill and booked it out of there. When I got outside, my friend was there, and she asked me to go to the bathroom with her. But to get there, you have to go through the bar because the bus stop isn't open at night. So we go, and that man is staring at me all the way. I told my friend what happened, but she just shrugged it off. Said that guy was probably drunk and was blabbering, not realizing that he was being super creepy. But I couldn't go there for a long while after that. I saw him once, and he was offering me ice cream, and after I got there again after a few months, he was gone. I hope that he retired because I never saw him again after that, but creepy old drunk man, I hope I never ever see you again. I hope you never see him again too. Honestly, stories involving the paranormal disturb me in a different way than those involve actual people being creeps. It's okay to be afraid of the dark, guys, but if you're out and about, just keep your eyes and ears peeled for fellow humans who might not have your best interests at heart. Just always be very aware of your surroundings. It makes a difference, especially if someone starts coming at you. If something makes you uncomfortable and you're like me, you might tell yourself that you're just being paranoid, and sometimes you are. But I would say it's better to be safe than sorry. Follow that instinct. There's a reason your mom tells you stranger danger. So thank you for your story, autora. Glad you're okay. I'm glad you don't have to interact with that man anymore. Here we go. Our next story is from Anna Piercy. I'm a 16-year-old girl, very soon to be 17. I've had multiple paranormal experiences, like being locked in a haunted room at the Stanley Hotel on my 16th birthday last year. But this is the story that is my most scary. Anyone who has lived in Colorado probably knows the ghosts of the Stanley Hotel, yet some don't know of a haunted road here called Riverdale. And back a couple months ago, I was driving down this same road. Traffic had been bad coming back home from a friend's house, so I decided to take a back route. I had been down the road before, but nothing really happened then. I was driving when one of my headlights had suddenly gone out. I didn't really think much of it at the time and kept driving, but I began to feel like someone was watching me. My heart began to race, and I felt the need to speed up. I knew about the road's apparent hauntings, the Phantom Camaro, the Ghost Lady, Joggers Hill, and Hell's Gate, but I wasn't really thinking about all of that right then. I kept driving, and as I did, the heavy feeling got worse. I made the stupid choice to look behind me. There wasn't anything there, but I was terrified, so I pulled over on a hill with a dirt path. I wanted to call my mom and just hope that if I heard a familiar voice, I would calm down. So I turned my car off to save the little gas that I had. My lights and everything were completely off. And then I began to hear heavy footsteps coming from behind my car. It wasn't just walking footsteps, it was fast-paced, like someone was running. They came closer and closer, and I panicked and pulled out of the hill and just kept driving. As I drove away, I looked out my window, hoping it was just a cruel late-night driver playing a prank, but there was nothing under the dim lights along the path. I just kept driving and soon became lost. At this point, I just wanted to cry. I was scared and just wanted to go home. I had to pull over once again, but this time onto a dirt road. I pulled up my GPS and typed in my address. While waiting for the map to load, I occasionally looked up, and the third time I did, I froze. There was a black figure standing at least 15 feet away. The only feature I could make out were its red eyes. I panicked and just started driving as fast as possible. I had an urgent sense of danger and just wanted out as the figure began to move. I managed to get off the road and I drove home as fast as I could, not caring if I got pulled over. Talking to my friend's mother after this, she told me about a part of Riverdale Road called Hell's Gate, where a mansion apparently used to be. It is said strange figures can be seen there, and she told me her husband claimed to have seen a demon when he drove down that same part of the road. I told her about my experience, and she told me about Joggers Hill, and as the story goes, a jogger was killed by a car and tries to attack any motorist who stops there. I still drive down that road now, but only during the day. I believe I was almost attacked by the jogger and saw one of the strange figures of Hell's Gate. And that is my experience. Now, I love me some Colorado and the Stanley Hotel. Toured it, would love to stay there, but now I have to check out this road too. I'm glad you've recovered, but yes, probably best to stay out of that area in the dark. Thank you for sharing your story, I appreciate it. On to number 4 from Evil Kitty Says. Okay, here we go, sorry. A couple years back when I was in high school, I used to stay the night with my friend Rachel almost every weekend. We would stay up in her room and talk. Her room had all these neon signs and stuff on the walls and this huge black light. It was almost the same length of her door and heavy as hell, and it was not easily moved. Most of the time after her mom and stepdad went to bed, we would go into her room and turn on the black light and just goof around. Well, one night we were in there just talking, and Rachel mentioned something about her ex. I asked what had happened between them, and she informed me that the relationship hadn't been good, and shortly after they broke up, he was actually killed in a drunk driving accident where his own mother was the drunk driver. I said that was terrible, and Rachel said his mother was an awful person. When I asked his name, she hesitated, and when she went to tell me, this large black light lifted off of the wall and flew at us from across the room as if someone had picked it up and thrown it. It took both of us to get it back onto the wall, and we tried to see if there was anything that would have moved it, but we couldn't find anything. We still have no idea what happened. Yeah. Sheesh. Glad you guys are okay. Sounds like by the size of that light, it could have done some serious damage, so hope you're alright after that. Thank you for sharing, I appreciate it. On to the next one from Kyber Serafino, parentheses, where the sidewalk ends. Because we're having a lot of parenthetical usernames today. Here we go. So, I've got this story for you. This happened a few years back, not to me, but to my little brother. So it was night, and pretty much everyone was asleep. My little brother was awake, though, lying in bed and waiting to fall asleep himself. Now, my brothers have bunk beds, and my little brother is on the bottom bunk. When his bedroom door is open, you can see from his bed into our living room. This night, the light in the living room was on, which wasn't unusual. My older brother often stayed up late doing homework. What was unusual was what he saw when he looked over at the living room. There was a figure standing in the light of the lamp, tall and completely shadowed. My brother couldn't move, couldn't think. He just stared at this shadow standing in our living room. It had no eyes, but he could tell that it was watching him too. Somehow, his eyes shut, and when they opened, the figure had moved. Before, it was standing next to the chair in the corner of our living room, but now it was next to the door frame. It still didn't make a single sound. It just stared at him. My brother closed his eyes again, still too freaked out to call for help. Now it was in the hallway, halfway to his room, staring. No one else was awake, and we're pretty heavy sleepers, so it would have been hard to wake someone. My little brother had no idea what to do. He closed his eyes one last time. When they opened, the thing was standing right outside his bedroom door, leaning almost into the room. It blocked out what little light remained, but he could still tell it was watching him. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. My little brother lay petrified in his bed and wished for morning to come quickly. He doesn't remember the rest of that night, and the thing was gone by morning. He never saw it again, but sometimes he still gets the distinct feeling that something is watching him, waiting for him. Terrifying, and not okay. traumatizing, and lots of other scary T words. Sounds to me, possibly sleep paralysis. I don't know if your brother suffers from that. I personally have had sleep paralysis episodes before, and I've never seen the shadow people, thank God. But many people describe it just that way, shadows without feature. Either way, hope he's doing okay, hope you're doing okay. Thank you for sharing. And our final story is from Tilft. Tilft! Cool name, but I'm probably butchering it, so I'm sorry. Tilft Select. Here we go. This is something that happened to me when I was about 9 and I was living in a townhouse back in Virginia. I was having my cousin over for a sleepover that night, but unfortunately, that same night, one of my best friends was moving away to California. Not wanting to abandon my cousin, we hung out together throughout the day, doing various activities, and later that night, we decided to stay in the living room and watch some Goosebumps movies. This was about 10 p.m., and we had all the lights off. Now, the living room was next to the front door, with an archway leading into the kitchen to our left. After the movie was over, we just shut off the TV and started talking about something when we both went dead silent. There were footsteps coming from the kitchen, and before you dismiss it as someone walking around upstairs, these were claws on tile footsteps, and we didn't own a pet at the time. It lasted for a few seconds until we ran upstairs, horrified. Later, we went back downstairs to put our popcorn bowls away in the kitchen, but as we were walking out, the claw sounds started up again, and once again we ran upstairs. There was nothing in the kitchen, everyone was asleep, and it was definitely an animal walking on tile sound. We had no other tile in the house other than the kitchen and the basement. I later learned that the friend that had moved that day had a cat that died a while back and was buried in his backyard right across the street from me. I still really don't believe in ghosts, but that experience is still something I have yet to explain to myself. Maybe Old Whiskers was coming around to say, hey, but either way, not a sound you really want to hear. And now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if ghosts are a real thing, science or paranormal based, whatever, do they understand how much them trying to communicate with us scares the bejesus out of us? Alright guys, before I go, since I'm getting more and more stories, I just wanted to address some things about the submissions that I keep getting, and it's going to kind of help me keep track of everything. First, I know some of you English is not your first language, that's fine, but for everyone across the board, English speaking or not, use what grammar you do know, please. It is incredibly helpful for me. I really appreciate grammar. It makes it so much easier to read. Second, either email your story or comment it down below. Please don't do both. I will see it either way, but it kind of messes up the system I have when I realize I have your story twice. Third, don't be afraid of the length of your story or detail. It's fine. Fourth and final, try to avoid something along the lines of, and I was thinking, holy shit, holy fucking shit titties on a fucking dick whisker cupcake. Or, this is a favorite of mine, and I say that ironically, not ironically, sarcastically. I say that sarcastically. I was shitting my pants, and we were all shitting our pants at this point. Please stop. It's a pet peeve of mine. Personally, other narration channels may not have a problem with that, and that's fine. I'm not a narration channel. I don't like reading that. It's a pet peeve of mine when I'm reading to see that because, for me personally, in my opinion, it takes the listener or reader out of the story. You weren't literally shitting your pants, so stop it. But with all that said, please send your experiences if you haven't already. Anything creepy, paranormal or not, if it's creepy and it's true, it counts. Not currently taking fiction pieces, but that may change. But until then, please refrain from sending them to me. Alright guys, that concludes another subscriber story time. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good night. I slouch a lot. Like, holy shit, slouch.